The sandbox illusion. Look closely at the architecture of a multi-billion-dollar pivot. In a notable address, researcher and business professor John Mullins introduced a graphic design teacher named Linda Weinman. Mullins recounted how, in 1995, Weinman simply sought a digital sandbox to experiment with emerging tools like Photoshop and Illustrator, alongside a space to showcase her students' work. He explained that what began as a simple repository grew steadily until 2002, when she transitioned her entire curriculum online. The result, as Mullins observed, was a business eventually acquired by LinkedIn for $1.5 billion, transforming her into the ideal case study for what he defines as the counter-conventional mindset. Mullins posited that a mindset is the internal mental inclination that predetermines how a person reacts when an opportunity arrives. He argued that the most successful founders operate on 6 specific psychological frequencies, rules that fly directly in the face of everything taught in modern corporate boardrooms. Chapter 2. Core competency is a trap. The first psychological shift Mullins detailed is the absolute rejection of traditional corporate boundaries. He noted that standard business strategy commands organizations to strictly stick to their core competencies and decline any opportunities lying outside their comfort zone. To illustrate the counter strategy, Mullins pointed to a Brazilian entrepreneur named Arnold Correa. Correa's client had requested a real-time satellite broadcast system across 260 stores scattered across Brazil. Mullins emphasized that despite Correa knowing absolutely nothing about satellite technology at the time, his immediate response was to accept the challenge. By repeatedly saying yes to unprecedented client problems, Correa fundamentally reinvented his enterprise 4 different times, illustrating that waiting for internal competency is an illusion. Capital moves toward those who claim the solution first and build the infrastructure later. The problem-first protocol. Mullins then shifted his focus to the distinction between product-driven thinking and problem-driven logic. He observed that major conglomerates spend billions altering superficial product features, changing color speckles in detergent, or releasing minor flavor variations, mistaking aesthetic modification for true innovation. In stark contrast, Mullins introduced an innovator named Jonathan Thorne, who chose to target a highly specific physical friction point, surgical forceps sticking to human tissue during delicate operations. Mullins detailed how Thorne leveraged a specialized silver-nickel alloy to resolve this issue. When progress slowed among general surgeons, Thorne narrowed his focus to neurosurgeons, a group for whom a sticking instrument carries catastrophic consequences. The enterprise was ultimately acquired by medical giant Stryker. Mullins used this transition to prove that premium value is never generated by merely polishing an existing product, but by systematically hunting down acute pain points, the power of hyper-narrow targets. This led directly to the third principle Mullins outlined, the strategic necessity of thinking narrow rather than broad. He explained that large institutions are obsessed with massive target markets to justify their scale, making them blind to micro-anomalies. To break this down, Mullins recalled the origins of Nike, founded by distance runner Phil Knight and track coach Bill Bowerman. At the time, the athletic footwear market catered exclusively to track sprinters. Mullins described how Knight and Bowerman identified an unaddressed crisis among distance runners who frequently suffered shin splints and sprains from training on uneven dirt roads. By engineering a shoe specifically tailored to this hyper-narrow, elite demographic, focusing heavily on lateral stability and lighter weights, they established an unshakable foundation. Only after dominating this microscopic niche did they scale outward to conquer basketball, tennis, and global athletic culture, engineering the financial float. The fourth pillar Mullins highlighted is a fundamental reassessment of cash flow, a concept he described as asking for the cash and riding the float. While massive corporations are frequently awash in capital, allocating billions to stock buybacks and passive dividends, early ventures must treat cash as immediate lifeblood. Mullins highlighted Tesla's strategic masterclass to prove this point. Instead of spending massive capital to build a mass-market electric vehicle from scratch, Elon Musk and his team secured upfront deposits of $100,000 each for a limited run of premium sports cars. Mullins noted that this single move injected $10 million into their accounts before a single vehicle had been manufactured. He observed that this exact mechanism was scaled during the Model 3 launch, where 500,000 consumers deposited $1,000 each, generating $500 million in interest-free capital to fund production. Mullins's data confirms a profound economic reality. The most efficient systems do not use their own wealth to build infrastructure. They utilize the financial float of market anticipation, asset borrowing, and ambient ambiguity. The final mindsets Mullins explored involved the creative leveraging of existing infrastructure and an immunity to regulatory paralysis. He introduced Tristram and Rebecca Mayhew, founders of the aerial adventure business Go Ape. Instead of purchasing expensive land, they negotiated exclusive rights to build courses within the state-owned UK Forestry Commission sites. Mullins pointed out that they effectively borrowed millions of dollars in infrastructure, the parking lots, the visitor centers, and the trees themselves, requiring them only to supply the harness kits. Mullins paired this asset borrowing strategy with a final, sharper truth, the refusal to wait for bureaucratic permission. He argued that if the founders of Uber had sought permission permission from transportation regulators beforehand, their business model would have been instantly dismantled to protect existing monopolies. Mullins concluded that when digital possibilities outpace slow, ambiguous regulations, the counter-conventional mind does not ask for permission. It simply executes. The frameworks have been delivered. The 6 rules have been decoded. The only remaining variable is which mindset you will integrate next to break through your own roadblocks. The data is waiting. Subscribe. Let's begin.